Hi, this is Thriza Navarrete. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Kapihan at the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C. Today we're very pleased to welcome retired Major General Antonio M. Taguba from the U.S. Army. But he's wearing a different hat today. He's also Community Ambassador of AARP, which is formerly the American Association of Retired Persons. It's a U.S. NGO and interest group based in Washington, D.C. for people ages 50 and over. Hi, General Taguba. Welcome po.
Hello, Taisa. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Sir, will you tell us a little more about AARP and your exciting role in that organization?
Well, it is very exciting. AARP asked me to be their community ambassador for the multicultural engagement, mostly for the Filipino American community, which is, I think, is very exciting. It's something that I'd like to do, or I wanted to do, to reach out to our community, especially to our younger generation, and how they can help with caregiving with their families, help with thinking about healthy living, lifestyle, and reimagining their lives when they actually finish working.
Oh, yes.
Their retired life.
General, why is this important? Do we see Filipinos not planning enough for the future?
Not at all. It's more of having a conversation on caregiving, which is it's not a new word, but it's actually called family care. And more, you know, the baby boomer generation, all of us who are 50 plus, are getting older. Caregiving has become kind of either a discovery or a crisis situation, where when our parents get ill, they would want somebody to care for them. And it's a common occurrence that the children, especially in the Filipino community, are expected to care for them. But it is a very challenging dynamic. It's also very costly. And it could also reach a crisis moment that they should not get into. It can be prevented, but it starts with a conversation and a planning. Getting the family as a team, looking for resources, and then getting that caregiver, principally a woman, a female.
Oh, okay.
About 88%, I think, are female caregivers. And it can be very, very exhausting. I watch my mom and dad, my mother cared for my dad. It was exhausting.
Oh, well, for many of our audience, they might be in this situation. Could you give us some pointers perhaps on how children and parents can start this conversation with each other?
Sure. Starting a conversation with parents, especially when you ask them, you know, how's your medical condition, your health, I should say, or who do you want to care for you? Typically, the parents would ask back, why you're asking this question. In the back of their mind, they said, oh, you're asking about inheritance.
Oh,
well, that's not it. It's called making sure that the children are aware that the parents are either well or they will need help in the future. And if that would be the case, then the children should offer to help. In many instances, they can. And in many instances, the parent, the aging parent, would want to know who would care for them. So that's the dynamic about starting that conversation. And then planning a team in a family. If there's one of you, one child in a family, that would be very difficult. If there are no children, it's even more complex and very challenging. But if there's 2, 3, or 5 of them, the siblings could, you know, team up. And say, hey, Nana, Tata, you know, they're not getting any better. They keep going to the hospital for whatever the case might be. And so we need to know what that is, because they will need help. It could be financially draining as
well. Well, of course, everyone gets old, and will there be other resources for people to go to AARP, like on their websites or anything like that, to help them go through this phase?
The best website to go, not just I'm a community ambassador for AARP, is aarp.org/caregiving. You don't have to go anywhere else. They've got a trove of information there. Before you get an insurance, find out what kind of insurance, especially in the United States. You know, Medicare does not necessarily cover everything.
Oh.
Medicaid does not cover unless you're really destitute of your finances.
Oh, yes.
Where do you find help? You know, in your local community, what kind of social workers are there to help you? Go and caregiving. What type of facilities that might be interested for your parents?
All right. Well, General, again, that website for our audience is
AARP, aarp.org/caregiving.
all right then. So take note of that, and the video will also have that below, so you can click on that link. Anyway, General, you know, I was going through AARP and reading about you earlier today, and
Did you enjoy reading?
of course, because I think, you know, service is a great part of both AARP and your life of service. In fact, the AARP motto is to serve, not to be served. And ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll be very proud. You know, my special guest is the second Philippine-born U.S. citizen to be promoted to the rank of general in the U.S. Army. He served 34 years there, and some of his important roles were as Deputy Commanding General for Support for the Coalition Forces, Land Component Command of the Army. That meant that he was responsible for overseeing logistical and support services for the U.S. and coalition forces for more than 150,000 troops during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Quite impressive. He also served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Reserve Affairs and Deputy Commanding General for Transformation for the U.S. Army Reserve Command. So, General, could you tell us a little about this exciting life in the military and how you got into this life of service?
Well, I actually followed the tradition of my entire Taguba family.
Oh.
My cousins, my father served for over 20 years. He was a Bataan Death March survivor along with my cousin and great uncle. So all of that combined, to include my son who's serving today and my nephew also in the U.S. Army, we have about 225 years of service to our country, both in the Philippines and here in the United States. So I think service to nation and answering the call to duty while in uniform is a noble profession. It's not for everybody, but we thought, you know, we'd do it. So it's very exciting. It's hard. There's no exact description of what military life is about.
Yes.
But you know, a lot of the folks who serve really enjoyed it, and then some probably do not enjoy it. But I had a good time.
Wow. Well, that's a great life of service that, you know, maybe a lot of our young people will want to follow as well. And there are certainly many ways for you to serve your community here. Now, General, I understand apart from the many things you're doing is also helping with the Filipino-American World War II Soldiers Recognition Project. Could you tell us a little about that?
You know, just a tidbit of history. During World War II, over 260,000 Filipino soldiers served in defending the Philippines. And we're still a Commonwealth then. So they're also defending the United States.
Yes.
They were promised, they were ordered to fight by President Franklin Roosevelt in July 1941 with the promise that they'll be getting their benefits. But when the war ended in 1945, when the Japanese Imperial forces were defeated, then in 1946 the U.S. Congress rescinded that promise, and so there were no benefits for them. So over 73 years, a lot of those veterans, we have about 16,000 to 17,000 of them left, have been petitioning for their benefits. Well, a group of us on April of this year decided that let's go beyond just petitioning.
Yes.
And start a program called the Filipino Veterans Recognition and Education Project. We're going to go after the Congressional Gold Medal, the U.S. Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest award bestowed by the U.S. Congress to a group or an individual. Now, the Filipino veterans are the last, we think, is the last minority veterans group that have yet to receive it. The Tuskegee Airmen, African Americans, have received it. The Navajo Code Talkers got that. The Puerto Ricans were also bestowed. The Japanese Americans received theirs 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I should say, and the Women in Service Corps got theirs. So why not? Why not the Filipino veterans who fought for this country and in a country not of their birth? So we're very optimistic. It will be about a 2 or 3 year project, but not only are we going to get the Congressional Gold Medal for them, we're going to establish an exhibition between the U.S. and the Philippines to showcase the medal. And then we're also planning a digitized educational program for generations like yourself and your future generations to understand why the veterans, with their experience, have provided the history for this country.
Yes.
And why generations will come after that. So it's very important.
Well, I think it's also important for our audience to participate in things like this. Could you tell us how the people at home can support this initiative?
Well, we started our board of directors. In fact, we established it this past week, September 13th. And we have a strategic engagement plan because it will impact both in the Philippines and the United States and worldwide. So we've got a plan to do public information and public awareness programs. We've already been engaging around the community, briefing the plan in San Francisco, Georgia, New York, and even Guam, for that matter, in Hawaii. So we want this to be a community-wide, national and international campaign. If nothing else, the focus is getting the support for the Filipino veterans. And hopefully, we're optimistic about it, to unify our community to get this done in the next 2 or 3 years.
Great. So ladies and gentlemen, a lot of interesting developments in the Filipino-American Veterans Initiative here in DC. So what we'd like you to do is keep in touch with your Filipino-American community leaders and see how you can help support these initiatives. Today, our little interview, we learned so much. We learned about AARP and the value of caregiving. We learned about the general and the life of service, not just his own, but his dad's and his children, his son and nephew also serving. Like I mentioned earlier, lots of opportunities for you to serve, and also about the veterans initiatives here. So from all of us in Washington, D.C., Ambassador Quisha and the rest of our officers and staff, and our special guest, General Taguba, maraming salamat po, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.